Two people wake up to the same mornings, earn the same salary, and live the same life. But one of them will quietly lose $250,000. Not in a moment, not in a mistake, but slowly, invisibly, through a 3-digit number that follows their name. No alarms, no accusations, just higher interest, heavier fees, and a life that costs more simply for existing. This isn't about money. It's about how the system decides whose life is allowed to be cheaper. On the surface, their lives look identical. Same income, same city, same routines. They wake up at the same time, work the same hours, and worry about the same bills. Neither is reckless. Neither is irresponsible. Yet beneath this symmetry, a quiet imbalance already exists. One of them is marked as safe, the other as risky. Nothing visible explains it. But from this point forward, every financial door will open differently, and the cost of that difference will compound in silence. The difference doesn't arrive all at once. It slips in quietly. A slightly higher interest rate here, a larger security deposit there, a premium that costs more not because of behavior, but because of perception. Nothing dramatic enough to notice, nothing large enough to question. But over time, these small numbers stack. What looks like normal pricing is actually tiered pricing, adjusted by a silent score that follows you everywhere. This is the hidden tax built into modern life. You don't vote on it. You don't receive a bill for it. You just pay it monthly, automatically, without ever seeing the total. Most people assume the score is judging them, their discipline, their responsibility, their worth. But that assumption is the first mistake. The system isn't emotional. It doesn't care about effort or intent. It doesn't reward restraint or punish excess. It measures only one thing: how predictable you are as a source of profit. A higher score doesn't mean you're better with money. It means you are easier to model, easier to price, and easier to extract from. This number was never designed to reflect stability in life. It was designed to standardize risk so debt could be packaged, sold, and multiplied. Human judgment was replaced by algorithmic certainty. Cleaner, faster, colder. And once that number exists, it begins to follow you, quietly influencing decisions you're never invited into. Loans, insurance, rentals, even opportunities begin adjusting themselves around it. Not because of who you are, but because of how valuable you are to the system. This is where the gap becomes real. Both of them decide to buy a house. Same neighborhood, same price, same walls, same roof, same future imagined inside it. The only difference is the number attached to their names. One is offered the best rate. The other is offered a fair one, just a little higher. It sounds harmless, almost polite. But over 30 years, that small difference doesn't stay small. It compounds. Month after month, year after year, interest quietly piles up. One of them sends thousands more to the bank for the exact same home. Money that could have been invested. Money that could have grown. Money that could have shortened the distance to freedom. Instead, it disappears into interest payments that feel normal because they're spread thin across decades. The house looks the same from the outside, but one of them is paying for it long after the other has moved on. This is how the system works. It doesn't punish loudly. It drains slowly, patiently, until the cost feels inevitable. At first, it feels contained. A mortgage, a loan, something you deal with once and move on from. But the number doesn't stay in the bank. It leaks outward. Insurance companies begin using it to decide how risky you are to insure. Landlords use it to decide whether you're stable enough to rent to. Utility companies use it to decide how much money you need to hand over before the lights even turn on. None of them ask what happened. None of them care why the number is lower. Medical emergency, layoff, divorce. Context doesn't exist in the system. Only outcomes do. So two people with identical driving records pay wildly different insurance premiums. Two renters with the same income face different deposits. One is trusted by default. The other is asked to prove themselves over and over again. The number becomes a reputation you never agreed to have. It follows you into decisions you're not present for, quietly influencing who gets approved, who gets questioned, and who gets charged extra for the same basic access. This is where the cost accelerates, not through one massive expense, but through friction. Small penalties applied everywhere, every month for years. The number no longer measures borrowing. It measures permission, where you can live, how much safety costs, how much effort is required just to be treated normally. And by the time you notice, you're already paying more simply to exist inside the system. What's happening now has a name, even if the system never uses it. It's called the poverty premium. It's the extra cost assigned to people who are labeled as risky. Not because they are careless, not because they break rules, but because the system predicts they might. Once that label is applied, prices begin to shift quietly. Interest rates climb. Insurance premiums inflate. Deposits grow heavier. Access becomes conditional. Everything costs a little more, everywhere, all the time. This is how the system protects itself. Risk isn't removed, it's monetized. Those seen as stable are rewarded with discounts disguised as trust. Lower rates, faster approvals, fewer questions. Those seen as unstable are allowed in, but only at a price. Overcharging is more profitable than exclusion. It keeps people participating while extracting more from them month after month. Two people can earn the same income, follow the same rules, and make the same decisions, yet experience completely different financial gravity. One moves forward with momentum. The other feels resistance at every step, not because of effort, but because of perception. Over time, that resistance becomes exhausting. The constant need to prove reliability, the constant penalties that never feel large enough to fight, but never stop either. Years later, the gap looks like a personal failure. It feels like falling behind, but it isn't personal. It's structural. The premium isn't paid once. It's paid repeatedly, quietly, invisibly. And the longer it's paid, the harder it becomes to escape. This is how inequality sustains itself, not through denial, but through accumulation. At some point, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The system does not reward wealth. It rewards participation. You can have money in the bank, no loans, no balances, and still appear invisible. To the algorithm, you are untested, unproven, a question mark. But someone else, living paycheck to paycheck, carrying balances, rotating debt, and making minimum payments on time, looks reliable, predictable, profitable. The score rises not because of stability, but because of consistent engagement with debt. This is why paying off a loan early can feel like punishment. The payments stop, the interest stops, and suddenly the number drops. Not dramatically, but noticeably. The message is subtle but clear. You were more valuable when you were paying. The system prefers a slow, steady stream of interest over independence. Cash doesn't generate data. Debt does. Every statement, every payment, every balance becomes a signal. Two people can behave responsibly and still be judged differently. One avoids borrowing and stays invisible. The other borrows carefully and builds a reputation. The difference isn't morality, it's data. And data is what the system feeds on. This is why credit scores don't measure security. They measure usefulness. How reliably you borrow, how consistently you repay, how long you stay in a cycle. Understanding this doesn't mean embracing debt blindly. It means recognizing the rules. The score isn't a badge of honor. It's a game token. And until you treat it that way, the system will continue rewarding behavior that keeps you dependent, not free. By the time adulthood begins, the game is already uneven, not because of talent, not because of ambition, but because of history. Some people entered the system with a record behind them. Others enter as blanks. The difference is invisible but decisive. A clean, lengthy credit history can be shared without money ever changing hands. One name added. One account linked. Years of perfect payments transferred silently. Two 18-year-olds step into the same world. One applies for their first loan and is trusted immediately. Low rates, easy approvals, options. The other is treated as unknown. Higher rates, more scrutiny, fewer choices. Neither earned this difference. It was assigned. One inherited access. The other inherited friction. And once that advantage exists, it compounds. Early approvals lead to better terms. Better terms protect the score. A protected score unlocks cheaper access. The cycle reinforces itself. This is how inequality reproduces without force. No rules are broken. No laws are violated. The system simply rewards continuity. Families who understand it pass down reputation the same way others pass down stories. Families who don't are left to learn through penalties. The system never explains itself. It just responds. And by the time effort enters the picture, the outcomes are already skewed. This isn't favoritism. It's inertia. The system trusts what it already knows. And what it knows best is history. Once you understand the rules, ignorance is no longer the problem. Identity is. The danger isn't the number itself. It's believing that it defines you. The system wants participation, not resistance. Opting out entirely sounds noble, but in practice it creates friction at every turn. Higher deposits, slower approvals, closed doors that never explain why. So the move isn't rebellion, it's precision. This is where intention replaces emotion. Payments are automated, not out of trust, but out of self-protection. Limits are expanded, not to spend more, but to look less desperate. Old accounts are kept alive, not because they're useful, but because history is currency in this system. None of this requires debt addiction. It requires discipline. Cold, mechanical discipline. The kind that treats the score as infrastructure, not self-worth. Two people can now face the same system with different outcomes. One reacts. The other anticipates. One pays penalties. The other avoids them quietly. The difference isn't obsession. It's organization. The system extracts wealth from chaos. It discounts order. By becoming boring, predictable, and invisible in the right ways, you become expensive to overcharge and difficult to exploit. The goal isn't to win the game. It's to finish it with as little loss as possible. Get the access. Secure the terms. Then let the numbers sit quietly in the background while your real life moves forward. By the time the cost becomes visible, it already feels normal. That's how the system survives. The money is never taken in one dramatic moment. It's collected quietly, spread across decades, hidden inside interest rates, premiums, deposits, and approvals that seem ordinary. No alert ever tells you that $250,000 has been siphoned away. There's no receipt for the life you overpaid for. It simply fades into the background of adulthood. Two people can spend 30 years doing what they were told to do, working, saving, planning, being careful. From the outside, their lives look almost identical. But when time finally compresses and the numbers are added up, one of them is lighter, less constrained, closer to choice. The other feels permanently behind, without ever being able to point to a single mistake that explains why. The difference was never discipline. It was pricing. One life was quietly discounted. The other was quietly marked up. This system doesn't rely on cruelty. It relies on silence, on complexity, on people believing the cost is fair simply because it's common, on people mistaking access for approval and approval for worth. The number was never meant to describe you. It was meant to describe how profitable you are to manage. But once it becomes personal, once it feels like judgment, people stop questioning it. They accept the surcharge as deserved. The moment that belief breaks, something shifts. The score shrinks back to its true size. Not a verdict, not a moral ranking, just a mechanism, a tool that can be managed, protected, and minimized. The system doesn't change, but your relationship to it does. And over a lifetime, that change isn't symbolic. It's measurable. It's fewer years lost to pressure, fewer choices delayed, more of your own money left where it belongs, with you.